Part 6. Hand-washing Yi Yang, who didn't feel that he was attracting everyone's attention, hurriedly found the original owner's seat and sat down, so as to have time to look at the man above the first seat. I saw that the man sitting on the first seat was as handsome as an immortal, dressed in white as snow, with a warm temperament like jade. And his gestures were all elegant and noble. Even Yi Yang, who had never admired men, showed a look of amazement. Compared with Shui Chen, the handsome men below instantly turned into vulgar powder. No wonder the emperor loves Shui Chen so much. This is not unreasonable. Is Brother Yi feeling better? Shui Chen in the first seat asked when Yi Yang came today. Thank you. Imperial concubine misses you. It's much better. Originally, Yi Yang should have been called Brother Shui Chen, but he really couldn't say it, so he could only call Imperial concubine. The surrounding male concubine saw Yi Yang calling Shui Chen so unfamiliarly, and they all showed the expressions of watching a good show. Everyone knew that Shui Chen was best to flatter, but Yi Yang actually went against it. Concubine Ling, who came in last, happened to hear Yi Yang calling Shui Chen an imperial concubine, and sneered in his heart. It seemed that Yi Yang would be thrown into the cold palace without much effort from him. He sat down and looked at Yi Yang with the mentality of watching the whole play. And please, it is far from what Yi Yang thought. He thought it would be enough to say a few words of good fortune to Shui Chen. But who knew that Shui Chen Barabara talked about a lot of trivial life, and Yi Yang, who was the most annoying, almost heard it and fell asleep. Do you have anything else to say? Shui Chen habitually ended with this sentence. Me. Yi Yang raised his right hand, indicating that he had something to say. Everyone looked at Yi Yang in amazement. What does this strange action mean? Shui Chen was also confused, but he quickly reacted and said, Brother Yi, if you have anything to say, just say it. Yi Yang immediately stood up, laughing like a dog. Imperial concubine, you have always treated me well. So I worked hard and spent a month of sleepless nights to finally research 2 good things, and now I specially give these 2 good things to you. The imperial concubine. Yi Yang took out a bottle of hibiscus leaf brand, shampoo, and a wooden box from his wide sleeve, and under the eyes of all curious, gave these 2 things to Yuan Shou, the eunuch most trusted by Shui Chen. Yuan Shou took these 2 things, first opened the cork, and glanced at the contents, but the light was too dim to see what was inside. He poured a little into his hand and looked at the green sticky juice and its aversion to cold. Master Yi concubine, what do you mean? Yuan Shou's face sank. This thing looks disgusting. How can he give such disgusting things to his honorable master? Eunuch Yuan, although this thing is not very beautiful in appearance, but it is easy to use. Look at my hair. Yi Yang pulled his hair in front of him and said, does it look smooth? Yuan Shou taking a closer look. He found that Yi Yang's hair was indeed smoother than others and nodded in approval. Yi Yang explained with a smile, I used this sticky thing to wash my hair. I found it easy to use, so I specially gave it to the imperial concubine. Concubine Ling sneered, this thing looks like a drama. Poison. Don't you want to frame your brother by using this thing for your brother? I'm going to fuck you. Do you think everyone is like you, deliberately trying to harm people? My imperial believes that Brother Yi will not harm me. Yuan Shou, bring it up. Shui Chen also didn't believe that this thing could make hair smoother, but in order to save Yi Yang's face, he had to accept it. Yuan Shou glared at Yi Yang, and then presented these 2 things to Shui Chen. Shui Chen was not interested in the contents of the bottle. He put the bottle on the table and opened the wooden box very curiously. Young master, no. Yuan Shou was afraid of some terrifying snakes and scorpions inside the wooden box. So he hurriedly stopped him, but it was obvious that his words were a beat later, and Shui Chen had already opened the wooden box. Immediately, a faint scent of hibiscus flowers drifted out. Concubine Ling, who was closest to Shui Chen, was the first to smell the faint scent of hibiscus flowers, and couldn't help but sniff. The other concubines who were far apart couldn't smell the fragrance, but when they saw the light pink soap, they couldn't help but take a second glance. It's so beautiful, it's pink and tender. And it's very attractive. What is this thing? It's quite fragrant. Shui Chen still likes this soap, not to mention the color is beautiful, the shape is also very beautiful. It is in the shape of a flower, like a delicate cake. Yi Yang stood up, clasped his fists and replied, Imperial concubine, I named this as a soap, which is used for bathing. You should also smell the faint fragrance on my body. To be honest, I just used it because of this soap. The body emits this faint fragrance. Oh tilde, there are such magical things? A flash of surprise flashed in Shui Chen's eyes. The imperial concubine may wish to try. Yi Yang suggested. Okay. The imperial concubine instructed Yuan Shou to quickly fetch a basin of water. Yuan Shou took the order and trotted out of the hall. When he came back again, he had already returned with a basin of warm water. Yi Yang was afraid that Shui Chen didn't know how to use it, so he stepped forward and recommended himself, Imperial concubine. I'll show you first. He rolled up his wide sleeves, wet his hands first, and then smeared them with soap. After a moment, put the soap back in the wooden box. He habitually washed his hands with the 7-step method of hand washing, and after a while, white foam appeared and covered his hands. Everyone was amazed, and their feet involuntarily approached Yi Yang. These white foams can remove the dirt on the hands and make the hands cleaner. Seeing that everyone was very curious, Yi Yang put his hands into the water and washed the foam on his hands while explaining. He took the handkerchief from Yuan Shou, wiped the water on his hands, and then stretched out his slender hands for everyone to watch. Everyone, take a look, are my hands clearer? Is there a faint scent left? A concubine who usually had no grievances with Yi Yang leaned forward to smell it and nodded. Really, it's very fragrant. Although Shui Chen is an imperial concubine, he is also curious. I washed my hands, then put the washed hands on the tip of my nose and sniffed, and found that it smelled really good. Looking up and seeing everyone's curious faces, Shui Chen smiled and said, Everyone, let's try it. After hearing this, everyone couldn't sit still, and they lined up in an orderly manner to start washing their hands. The first time I washed my hands with soap, everyone's eyes were full of surprises, especially when they looked at the foam on their hands. They played like children who didn't grow up. Seeing that everyone was having a good time, Yi Yang smiled, stood aside, and waited for them to wash their hands. A quarter of an hour later, the concubines who had washed their hands put their hands under their noses and sniffed, smelling the faint fragrance on their hands, full of joy.